The garage was a symphony of clanging tools, the sharp tang of motor oil, and the low hum of engines waiting to be tamed. To 17-year-old Mia, it was home. She'd grown up here, trailing her father, Tom, through the maze of car parts and greasy rags, learning the language of engines before she could spell her own name. Tom was the best mechanic in Willow Creek, a small town where his shop, Tom's Auto Repair, was a lifeline for everything from rusted pickups to gleaming classics. Mia was his shadow, her nimble fingers and sharp mind absorbing every trick he taught her. She could read an engine's cough like a doctor reading a heartbeat, but to the regulars, she was still just Tom's kid, the girl who handed out wrenches and swept the floors. That morning, the garage was quieter than usual, the early summer heat keeping customers away. Mia was in the corner, organizing a toolbox with surgical precision, sockets in neat rows, screwdrivers aligned by size. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her faded overalls were streaked with grease, a badge of honor she wore proudly. Tom was under a sedan, muttering about a stubborn bolt, when the glass door swung open with a force that rattled the bells. Mr. Callahan stormed in, his polished shoes clicking on the concrete floor. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a tailored suit that screamed money and a voice that demanded attention. His vintage Mustang, a 1967 beauty he'd bought at an auction, was his pride and joy, and he'd been in 3 times that month complaining about its performance. Tom, he bellowed, his face flushed. This engine's still coughing like a chain smoker. You said you fixed it last week. Tom slid out from under the sedan, wiping his hands on a rag. His weathered face stayed calm, his voice even. Checked it twice, Mr. Callahan. New plugs. Tuned the carburetor. She's running smooth as far as I can tell. Callahan's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a sneer. Smooth. It's choking worse than before. Maybe you're losing your touch, Tom. He paced, his voice carrying over the hum of a fan in the corner. The other mechanics, Jake and Luis, who were swapping a tire across the garage, glanced over but kept their heads down. Callahan had a reputation. Rich, impatient, and quick to throw his weight around. He wasn't the type to let things go. Mia, still crouched by the toolbox, felt her stomach tighten. She hated how Callahan talked to her dad, like Tom was some amateur. She'd seen her father work miracles, rebuilt engines, salvaged wrecks, even got a 40-year-old tractor purring for a farmer who'd given up hope. Tom didn't deserve this. She stood, brushing her hands on her overalls, ready to slip back into the background, but Callahan's gaze landed on her. What's she doing here, anyway? He said, jerking his chin toward Mia. Fetching your tools. Or just playing mechanic. His laugh was sharp, cutting through the garage like a blade. Jake and Luis froze, their eyes darting between Mia and Callahan. Tom's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Callahan leaned in, his voice dripping with mockery. Tell you what, Tom. If you're so sure about your work, let's see if your kid's got any of your supposed skill. I dare her to fix it. Let's see if she's worth more than sweeping the floor. The garage went dead silent. Even the fan seemed to hold its breath. Mia's pulse quickened, her hands curling into fists. She knew Callahan's type. Men who thought a girl in a garage was a novelty, a joke. She'd heard the whispers before. Cute, but she's just Tom's helper. She'd ignored them, focusing on the work, the engines, the problems she could solve with her hands. But this was different. Callahan wasn't just questioning her. He was challenging her in front of everyone. Tom stepped forward, his voice low but firm. Mia's not your guinea pig, Callahan. I'll take another look at the car myself. But Mia wasn't backing down. She felt the weight of every eye in the garage. Jake's curious glance, Louise's raised eyebrow, her father's protective frown. She stepped forward, her boots scuffing the concrete, and met Callahan's gaze. "I'll take a look," she said, her voice steady despite the fire in her chest. "If you're so sure it's a problem, I'll find it." Callahan's smirk widened, like he'd just won a bet. "A kid like you. All right, princess, go ahead. Impress me." He crossed his arms, leaning against a workbench, clearly expecting her to fumble. Jake whispered something to Louise, and they both stifled grins, not out of malice but because they'd seen Mia tinker before. They knew she wasn't just Tom's kid. Mia didn't waste time on words. She grabbed her father's diagnostic kit, a battered metal case filled with tools she knew better than her own reflection, and marched to the Mustang, parked just outside the bay. The car was a stunner, cherry red with chrome that gleamed under the morning sun. But beauty didn't mean much if the heart wasn't beating right. She popped the hood, the familiar creak of metal grounding her nerves. The V8 engine stared back, a maze of pipes, wires, and power. To most, it was chaos. To Mia, it was a story waiting to be read. She started with the basics, her hands moving with the confidence of someone twice her age. She checked the spark plugs. Clean, just as her father had said. The carburetor was tuned, the air filter new. But the engine's cough, that uneven sputter she'd heard when Callahan drove in, told her something was off. She leaned closer, listening to the idle, her ear tuned to the rhythm. It wasn't just misfiring. It was starving, gasping for fuel. Her fingers traced the fuel lines, her mind racing through possibilities. Clogged injector. Bad filter. She crawled under the car, ignoring the heat of the concrete against her knees, and inspected the fuel pump. Her gut told her this was it. 10 minutes later, she stood, wiping grease from her cheek with the back of her hand. The garage was still watching, Callahan's smirk now tinged with impatience. "Well," he demanded, "what's the verdict, kid?" Mia didn't flinch. "It's not the engine," she said, her voice clear. "It's the fuel pump. Clogged and starving the system. Replace it, and it'll run like a dream." Callahan laughed, a harsh bark that echoed off the walls. "A fuel pump? You're guessing, girl. You didn't even hook it up to a machine." Mia's eyes narrowed. "I don't need a machine to hear what's wrong. The engine's choking because it's not getting enough fuel. Check the pump yourself if you don't believe me." Tom stepped beside her, his hand hovering near her shoulder but not touching, letting her stand on her own. "She knows what she's talking about, Callahan. I'd trust her call." Callahan's face reddened, his confidence wavering. "Fine," he snapped. "Swap the pump. But if she's wrong, Tom, you're eating the cost of the parts, and my time." He jabbed a finger at Mia. "Don't think you're fooling anyone, kid." Mia didn't respond. She didn't need to. The truth was in the work, and she'd prove it. As Callahan stormed off to wait in his air-conditioned SUV, Tom gave her a small nod, pride flickering in his eyes. The other mechanics went back to their tasks, but the air buzzed with something new: respect, curiosity, maybe even a little awe. Mia grabbed the new fuel pump from the supply shelf, her hands steady, her mind already on the fix. She wasn't just Tom's daughter today. She was the mechanic who'd taken the dare, and she was ready to make that Mustang. The Mustang's engine roared to life, a deep, throaty growl that filled Tom's auto repair with a sound so pure it was almost music. Mia stood by the open hood, arms crossed, her grease-streaked overalls a stark contrast to the polished chrome of the vintage car. The morning sun streamed through the garage's open bay, catching the cherry red paint and making it glow. The other mechanics, Jake and Louise, paused their work, their applause breaking the tension that had hung over the shop since Mr. Callahan's challenge the day before. Mia's diagnosis, a clogged fuel pump starving the engine, had been spot on, and the swap she'd performed in under an hour had the Mustang purring like it had just rolled off the 1967 assembly line. Mr. Callahan, who'd been pacing outside in his tailored suit, froze at the sound. His SUV's air-conditioned comfort hadn't cooled his impatience, but the Mustang's flawless rumble stopped him cold. He strode into the garage, his polished shoes clicking, his face a mix of disbelief and irritation. He leaned over the engine, as if inspecting it himself would reveal some trick. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered, running a hand through his slicked back hair. "It's fixed." Mia didn't move, her hazel eyes steady. She wiped a smudge of grease from her cheek with the back of her hand, her expression unreadable. "Told you," she said simply. "Fuel pump was the problem. Now it's not." Callahan's mouth twitched, caught between a scowl and a grudging nod. "Lucky guess, kid," he said, his voice low, like he was trying to save face. "Don't get cocky." Mia's lips curved into a faint smirk, just enough to sting. "It's not luck," she said, her tone cool but sharp. "It's listening to the car. You'd hear it too if you weren't so busy yelling." The garage erupted in laughter. Jake let out a low whistle, and Luis, usually the quiet one, chuckled as he leaned against a workbench. Even Tom, who'd been watching from the sidelines, cracked a rare grin, his weathered face softening with pride. Callahan's cheeks flushed a deeper red than the Mustang's paint, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. He wasn't used to being outdone, especially not by a 17-year-old girl in greasy overalls. He opened his mouth, maybe to fire back, but the Mustang's steady purr seemed to mock him, filling the silence with proof of Mia's skill. Without another word, he snatched the keys from Tom, who'd been holding them out with a calm, professional nod. "Send me the bill," Callahan snapped, avoiding Mia's gaze as he slid into the driver's seat. The Mustang rolled out of the bay, its engine singing as it disappeared down the sunlit street, leaving a trail of dust and Callahan's bruised ego in its wake. Tom stepped beside Mia, placing a calloused hand on her shoulder. "You showed him, kid," he said, his voice low but warm. "Didn't just fix the car. You shut him up. That's harder." Mia's smirk widened, but she shrugged, brushing off the moment like it was just another day in the garage. "He dared the wrong mechanic's daughter," she said, her tone light but laced with steel. She turned back to the toolbox she'd been organizing before Callahan's interruption, her hands already itching for the next task. But the air in the shop felt different now, charged with something new. Jake and Luis weren't just glancing at her with curiosity anymore. There was respect in their eyes, a quiet acknowledgement that Mia was more than Tom's shadow. Word spread faster than a spark plug firing. By noon, the phone was ringing off the hook. Mrs. Delaney, who'd been bringing her old Buick to Tom for years, called to ask if that girl who fixed the Mustang could look at her car's rattling exhaust. Then came Mr. Hensley, the farmer with the temperamental tractor, asking for Mia by name. Even old man Carter, who usually grumbled about everything, stopped by to drop off his pickup and said, "Heard you got Callahan's car running. Figure you can handle my junker." Mia took it all in stride, nodding politely and jotting down notes, but inside, her chest swelled with a quiet pride. She'd always known she could do the work. She'd been proving it to herself for years, but now the town was starting to see it too. By the end of the week, Tom's Auto Repair had a new reputation, and it wasn't just about Tom. Customers weren't just asking for the best mechanic in Willow Creek, they were asking for the girl who fixed Callahan's car. The nickname stuck, whispered in diners and hardware stores, carried on the breeze of small-town gossip. Mia didn't care much for the attention. She wasn't in it for the praise. What she loved was the work. The puzzle of a misfiring engine, the satisfaction of a bolt clicking into place, the hum of a machine brought back to life. Each car was a challenge, a story told in metal and oil, and Mia spoke its language fluently. One afternoon, as she was wrist deep in a Chevy's carburetor, a shadow fell over her. She glanced up to see Jake, the older mechanic with a perpetual coffee stain on his shirt, leaning against the car. "You know," he said, scratching his beard, "I've been here 10 years, and I ain't never seen Callahan eat his words like that. You got something, kid." Mia tightened a screw, not looking up. "Just did what Dad taught me," she said, but her voice betrayed a flicker of pride. Jake snorted. "Tom's good, but you got your own thing going. That ear of yours, listening to engines like they're talking to you. That's not taught. That's born." Mia paused, her wrench still in hand. She wasn't used to compliments, not from Jake, who usually teased her about her messy ponytail or her habit of humming while she worked. She nodded, a quick acknowledgement, and went back to the carburetor. But Jake's words lingered, settling into her like a spark. She'd always known she belonged in the garage, but now she was starting to see it wasn't just about belonging, it was about standing out. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the garage emptied out, Tom called Mia over to the office, a cramped room cluttered with invoices and coffee mugs. He sat behind the desk, his hands folded, his expression unreadable. "Got a call from the community college today," he said. "They heard about you. Want you to come talk to their automotive program. Maybe even teach a class or two." Mia blinked, caught off guard. "Teach? I'm not even out of high school." Tom leaned back, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Doesn't matter. They see what I see, a mechanic who knows her stuff. You're not just my kid anymore, Mia. You're building something of your own." She looked down at her hands, still smudged with grease, and felt a weight she hadn't noticed before. It wasn't just about fixing cars now, it was about what came next. The garage, the town, the customers, they were all watching, waiting to see what she'd do with the spark she'd ignited. And Mia, who'd spent her life solving puzzles under the hood, knew this was the biggest one yet.